Hi, I'm Nick with Sarah from St. University, and I'm going to be taking you through our personal finance course. Now, how important is your personal finance? Well, it's extremely important, but you'd be surprised to know that the number one reason for divorce in the United States is actually financial issues. I'm not. Why? Well, I take a look at all the different arguments that occurred when I was a kid. We'd go to the store and I'd see the newest He-Man or the newest G.I. Joe. And of course, I'd take it and I'd throw it in the cart. Parents would see that, they'd put it back on the shelf, I'd throw it back in the cart, they'd put it on the shelf. Eventually, it leads to a temper tantrum. Then, of course, they say, keep it up, see what happens. And I'd say, maybe I need to back down. We get home, I go ahead and play with the G.I. Joes I had, the He-Man I had, and it wasn't a big issue to me. But to my parents, it was. Why? Because they felt guilty. They weren't able to provide me with everything I wanted. At the same time, they were concerned that maybe if I didn't have the newest He-Man or the newest G.I. Joe, that I wouldn't be part of the in crowd anymore. And they wanted to make sure that, I was accepted by my peers. Now, we know that personal finance is something a lot of Americans struggle with, but there's no high school or college that focuses on it. How insane is that? That's why Sarah from Supplements went ahead and invested in Sarah from St. University. And one of the things they wanted us to focus on is helping people relieve some of the stress that they get from having difficult with their finances. And that's why we created this course. So what are we going to do? We're going to go ahead and build a pathway for success. How do we do that? We're going to go ahead and get to a point where you're paying your bills first. We need to make sure that you have enough income coming in to cover your expenses. And if you don't, then we need to go ahead and correct those expenses. We need to identify and prioritize those. Then we can go ahead and protect your family. And there's different ways to do that. Part of it's going to be making emergency funds, making sure we have the proper amount of insurance if something occurs. Then we go to eliminating debt. Of course, many people have ended up getting student loans. A lot of people have credit card debt. In fact, credit card debt is one of the major reasons people file for bankruptcy. And in spite of that, one of the first things people get after their bankruptcy, a new credit card. Then we're going to touch on how we're going to save and invest. And then finally, we're going to be able to help others. Now, we have to do these in steps. You just can't build here up. Then you don't have a strong foundation and everything falls apart. So what we're going to do in order to get us there, we're going to start by creating the budget. Now, creating a budget seems extremely easy, but in fact, it's not. And we're going to get into why in our first lesson. And then we're going to go ahead and build an emergency fund. And that's part of protecting our family. And we're going to get into a lot of details there on what those emergency funds should look like. But we need to know our budget in order to do that, because the emergency fund is going to help us be able to pay our bills, our monthly bills, if something is to occur. And we really have to understand what all of our expenses are and what our true budget is in order to know how much we need in that fund. Then, of course, we're going to create a debt elimination plan. Now, there's a couple of different models that we're going to look at. I'm going to show you the one that I think is the best. And part of the reason why is the psychological advantage you'll get by using that method. Then we're going to save for unexpected expenses. Now, a lot of you say to yourself, well, isn't that what the emergency fund is? No, the emergency fund is for something major, like losing your job, and you have to actually pay all of your bills for the month. And if you don't have that emergency fund, what ends up typically happening is you have to borrow money, and that's going to actually end up becoming debt. And of course, we're looking to eliminate debt. So what we have to do is we have to plan for unexpected expenses like your car breaking down. And that might be $1,500 to fix. But if we take from the emergency fund, normally what ends up happening is we don't refill it. And then when an emergency happens, we're screwed. So we need to make sure we do everything in the right order. Finally, we're going to plan for retirement. Now, a lot of people say, no, Nick, that should be way up here. That shouldn't be down there. Here's the thing. Why would credit card debt be more important than planning for retirement? Credit card debt typically is going to end up being a 20% interest rate. When you pay off that debt first, you're essentially returning on investment of 20% to yourself by paying off that debt. How often can you put together a return on investment for a 401k or a Roth IRA that's going to return 20% investment? Very rarely, because you have to invest in a lot of high risk, high reward opportunities. The problem is, once again, they're high risk. So even if you would have, say, 2 of 3 stocks produce 20% return, if the other produces 0, you still don't have a 20% return on investment average. And that's why eliminating debt is more important. So this is the format we're going to use to go ahead and get you in a financially stable situation. With that in mind, go ahead and get some water, hit the pause button, and I'm going to go ahead and put together our first lesson, and I'll see you back in just a minute. Welcome back. We're going to go ahead and begin by creating our own budget. Now, in order to create our own budget, we have to identify a few terms. Income. Let's say you just graduated college. You're making $36,000 a year, $3,000 a month, $1,500 every 2 weeks. But is that truly the income you're bringing in? No. Why? Because Uncle Sam, he's skimming a little bit off the top. You're having to pay taxes before you get that check. What ends up coming to you? Probably $1,250 every 2 weeks. That's the income we have to focus on, because that's what you have to create your budget off of. We also have to identify what type of expenses we have. We have 2 types of expenses. We have fixed costs, fixed expenses, and we have variable costs, variable expenses. So what is a fixed cost? What is a fixed expense? That is anything we cannot adjust in the next 2 or 3 days. That's something we're locked into, like a rental agreement or a car payment. Of course, we can go ahead and get out of our lease agreement in 9 months, or we can refinance our mortgage in 2 years. But that's not something we can adjust right away. So it's pretty much a fixed cost. Now, a variable cost is anything we can change today. And that is the key to creating a budget, is having more variable costs than you do fixed costs. Why? Because it provides us a lot of flexibility. Whenever you're trying to create a budget, you want to have something that's realistic, something you can stick to. Just like dieting, you can't go cold turkey with everything. I've heard of people doing a grapefruit diet, where all they eat is grapefruit. And they may be able to do it a week or maybe 2, but then of course it ends up falling apart because you just can't give up everything. It's the same thing with creating a budget. You cannot give up everything you're currently doing. But do you even know what you're doing? Do you even know how much money you have going out every month? Most people don't. Why? Credit cards. Credit cards are great because we don't have to carry cash around. We don't have to worry about it falling out of our pocket. We don't have to worry about getting robbed as much because we're not flashing cash. We don't have $300 on us or $400 on us at all times. That way we're not a target. But what ends up happening a lot of times then is we go ahead and just leave the receipt behind because we don't want it to clutter up our wallet or our purse. We only keep that receipt when it's an item we might possibly return. So what ends up happening? The expense becomes out of sight, out of mind. And we don't recognize how much money we're truly spending. And that's why credit card debt is so high throughout the United States. What we have to do is kind of go old school. In old school, people used to balance their checkbook. And everything they did, they wrote a check and they deducted. We need to do the same thing. But let's do it with modern technology. Let's go ahead and use Google Sheets or Excel sheets and create multiple tabs. Let's have our first tab be December. And let's go ahead and begin tracking our expenses. Of course, we have the income coming in on 12/1. We're going to stick with that $36,000 a year job and say it's $1250 that's truly coming in. 12/3 comes along, and now you owe $500 for your rent. You took the full 3 days grace period, and then you paid the $500. Now, is that a fixed cost? Yes. So, as you can see, we have important areas we need to have. We need to have the date, the amount, the description, and whether or not something is a fixed cost. So that's a fixed cost. We know that's something we're not really going to be able to change. 12/4 occurs, and you spend $4.75 at Starbucks. Now, every week you decide to go to Starbucks on Friday with your friends. That way you all can tell everybody what happened over the course of the week and unwind. So we're going to classify that description as a mental health expense. Why? Because it's not truly a food or drink expense. The whole point is not consumption for a basic need. It's actually for your mental health. Now, is that a fixed cost? No. Does it feel like it? Probably, because your mental health is extremely important, and that's not something you want to give up. But it's still a variable cost. It's still something where if a major event occurs, you could give that up for a week and you would probably be fine. 12/5 happens, and you say, you know what? I'm going to go to brunch with friends. And you spend $30, you get some omelets and bottomless mimosas. What is that? That's an entertainment expense because you're going out and you're just having fun. It's something you decided to do. Once again, not really a food expense because the whole point wasn't the food, it was getting together with friends. Now, is this an accurate representation of what your normal week expense is? I don't know. You don't know. That's why we need to really take a look at a 3-month average. We need to have 3 other tabs, a November tab, an October tab, and a September tab. And we need you to go back and add your income in those months as well as your expenses. Within each tab, I want you to go ahead and list all the variable expenses you have and order them in priority. What do you value the most out of those expenses? Was it a weekend in Florida? Was it going out with friends to the bar? Was it, seeing family members and spending $70 at a nice dinner and restaurant with them? You need to go ahead and recognize what are your top priorities and recognize that each month. Then we need to go ahead and create an average of what your expenses are because we need to know what is normal. It may be that you normally go out on Friday and Saturday and spend $50 at the bar buying shots. And based off of just December, we wouldn't know that. So we wouldn't be putting together an accurate budget. We wouldn't be planning properly. That's why we need to go ahead and have the previous 3 months as well. Your homework this week is to go ahead and create this Excel sheet, to go ahead and create this Google sheet and put in all of your expenses, put in your income, prioritize from 1 to 20 the variable expenses in each month. Put that together, then come back next week and we'll go over some of those things and where we can make adjustments, and we'll move forward from there. Have a good week.